Hello everybody, my name is Barry Johns and this is Studio Talk. Ketchup is not meant for hot dogs. Go mustard! Let's get started! Welcome back. So as the title says, are the new Universal Audio Vote interfaces a gimmick or are they great? Before I get into my thoughts on these new interfaces, let's go get some of the specs out of the way, then we can chat about who, if anybody, these new interfaces are for. First, let's go over what they just released. Hey, teleprompter guy, come on, start playback, man. Come on, time is money, baby. Okay, here we go. All models work with Mac, PC, and iOS. All can be bus powered. Great for taking on the road with just a laptop, iPad, or iPhone. If you'd like to power the unit with DC, you can buy the 5-volt DC power supply, which is sold separately. All units are USB-C, have both MIDI in and MIDI out jacks on the rear, and finally, you can simulate Universal Audio's 610 mic preamp on each unit's mic pre, which can be bypassed for a non-colored signal. You can also perform direct monitoring of the inputs without having to use a separate GUI when tracking no latency. Up first are the two base entry-level models, Vote 1, 1 in, 1 out, Vote 2, 2 in, 2 out, prices are $139 and $189. Next up, there are three more options, the Vote 176 at $249, Vote 276 at $299, and Vote 476 at $360. The first number of each model indicates a number of mic preamps on each unit. In addition to the features of the two base models, these three models come with a built-in 1176 FET-style compressor with 3 selectable presets for use when tracking. The 476 has some additional I/O, so let's go over that. In addition to the two XLR quarter-inch combi inputs on the front, the rear has an additional 2 line inputs for a total of 4 in. It also has 4 line outputs, which with the additional 2 line inputs on the back as well as the 4 line outputs, this makes it a great option for incorporating outboard hardware gear via inserts from your DAW as well as other things. In addition to the 4 line outputs, you get 2 dedicated monitor outputs, maximum of 4 outputs though, keep that in mind. You can monitor each input and output separately via selectable buttons on the front of the unit. This model is by far the most full-featured of the interfaces. Okay, so you can watch other videos that go into more benign specs. I'm not gonna bore you with all of that. So like I said, are these entry-level interfaces a gimmick or are they great in the price point? Are you ready for my thoughts? Well, I guess so if you're still watching this, so here they are. But first, the hardest question to answer someone is what interface should I buy? There are so many variables in this decision. I plan to make a more detailed video about that in the future, but for sake of this discussion, let's keep it simple by talking about entry-level interfaces in the sub $399 price range. The obvious questions you have to ask yourself, what features and specs should I be looking for in this price range? So let's talk about some of those. How good are the drivers? Well, on this, I am confident that Universal Audio will be as good, if not better, than most at this level. That said, UA has had issues in the past with Windows 10 drivers. Those seem to all be resolved now. There's a great resource at Sweetwater on how to properly set up a Windows system for UA interfaces. You should check that out. Mac drivers for Universal Audio have always been solid, so those things considered, I'm very confident UA will deliver on a solid driver point. I consider this a win. Up next, how well is a unit constructed? Will it hold up to a lot of use? These units, albeit ugly as all get out and way too retro for me, okay, don't flame me, all of the units look to be built solid as you can expect from Universal Audio as they have a history of making very well-built products. I consider this a win. Next, input and output options. They cover most entry-level needs from 1 in, 2 out to 4 in, 4 out, which is more than enough for the majority of entry-level project studios. The only thing I feel was a big miss was SPDIF, which is very handy for those of us using modern guitar modelers. MIDI is really not needed as you can buy a USB MIDI I/O for cheap these days, so there's no real need to have that over SPDIF in my opinion. For me, as far as I/O, I think it's a wash. Not better, not worse than the competition in that price range. Today, just about every interface gives you the ability to record with no latency by routing the input source directly to the headphone output, but most, if not all, the competition requires a separate GUI that sits in front of your DAW to do this. The Volt interfaces allow you to do direct monitoring, zero latency, without a separate GUI. I love that UA did this, and I think it makes a creative process so much more enjoyable not having to clutter up your screen with a separate GUI. And finally, how good are the mic preamps? Universal Audio knows how to make mic preamps, and the fact that you can simulate their 610 mic preamp is a bonus. Maybe not an over-the-top bonus, but at least you have that option. Let's face it, the 610 preamp sound is not for everyone. I happen to like it, but it can be a little dark for some people. It will be interesting to see how it compares to the real 610. If anybody can make that one sound great, it's Universal Audio. I consider this a huge win. Now, what would have been off the charts would be if they had a built-in generic stereo reverb to go along with the models that offer the 1176 option. Being able to add reverb would have been incredible. I know that makes the price go up, but a boy can dream, right? At the end of the day, I consider this a win. Let's talk about who competes with UA on these interfaces. PreSonus. PreSonus has come a long way over the last few years. That said, they do not have a stellar reputation with either build quality or drivers. To me, even though PreSonus is working hard to improve, I feel that UA beats them handedly based upon UA's reputation. Behringer. Do I really have to go over that? I didn't think so. Next, Motu. Motu has been making some great interfaces over the last 5 years or so. Their interfaces have always been built like tanks and have always had very stable drivers. They are a very strong competitor to UA's Volt. Audient. Audient makes solid gears. They don't have the same reputation as Universal Audio yet, but their stuff is good, if not great. That said, I'd still bet on UA Volt in this comparison. Focusrite. Focusrite also has an incredible reputation for making high-end interfaces as well as audio hardware. Their new Claret units released this past summer have received strong reviews. Granted, the Claret units start at slightly above the price range of the Volt 476. So, if you want my opinion, and I'm sure you already know this, I've not used one of these units yet, but I know Universal Audio's reputation, and the fact that they are entering non-DSP-based interface market can potentially tell us where they're going. So here it is. If it were me, out of the competition I just mentioned, I would only consider Universal Audio's Volt interfaces in the sub $399 price range. I think when the dust settles, they are going to be very good, if not the best entry-level interfaces to be produced yet. I think UA's move is exactly what they needed to do right now, and next would be to make their DSP more powerful, a lot more powerful. Watch my video on that, where I tend to be a little critical of them sitting on that for too long. Even though that video was a somewhat critical view of them lately, the purpose was meant to nudge them back on track in the right direction. Personally, I've always been a fan of Universal Audio. So there you have it, and there it is. If you like my content, if you like the videos I put out, please hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. Helps me grow the channel. I encourage you to go back and watch some of my other videos. I do this for you. I'm a studio guy just at home, just like you are. I'm not some professional. I'm just a guy who's sharing what he's learned over the decades of my passion in doing all of this. So until next time, I hope every one of you have a great day.